Everybody's got to be somewhere, but for the homeless in America, the where is becoming a real problem.
So we're basically, a community at war within itself over this issue.
And did you say at one point there were homeless people sleeping in 15 parks?
Yeah, we had people in all of our city parks. That just wasn't an ideal place for people to be.
This week, the Supreme Court ruling that offers a blueprint for communities across America on how to handle the homeless crisis.
So it looks like we're coming into an area that's pretty charred up here.
So this is the Crooked Creek fire.
In the Carolina mountains, one natural disaster is creating the fear of another.
Well, for me, it's almost a daily grieving.
This week, the aftermath of Helene and the danger of the wildfires to come.
I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country. And what a job they've done.
President Trump's actions on our southern border have all but stopped the flow of illegal immigrants into the U.S. This week, Scott Thuman reports from Panama on the efforts to shut down a human trafficking superhighway. Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. As you probably know, America is in the midst of a homeless crisis. The number of homeless, to the extent it can be counted, recently reached the highest on record, numbering more than 650,000. The impact is felt in big cities and even some smaller towns. One of them is Grants Pass, Oregon, where a landmark court case exposed a fierce divide over how to handle the homeless. Like any homeless camp in America,
so this is the J Street encampment.
There are as many different stories as there are people to tell them.
This is Tinsel. I lost my job due to my depression, and to the point to where I couldn't even do my job anymore.
And for all of you, where's your next meal going to come from?
Probably the feed that comes here about 2 o'clock.
This camp is in Grants Pass, Oregon, a 4-hour drive south of Portland, and an unlikely center point in a tug of war between the rights of the homeless versus the rights of residents who want them cleared from public areas. Ed Johnson represents the homeless as a lawyer for the nonprofit Oregon Law Center. How did this become a case that was litigated in court?
So we started to hear from people back in 2017 that they were being approached by law enforcement and told there's nowhere you're allowed to be in town. And the fines were $295 a pop, which, not surprisingly, if you're living outside, might as well be $1 million. And so we ended up representing a group of people who had been living in Grants Pass for years, who had faced these criminal penalties for living outside.
The lawsuit on behalf of the homeless was filed in 2018. Initially, the court ruled it was cruel and unusual punishment for Grants Pass to arrest or ticket people sleeping outside if they had nowhere else to go.
So we're basically, a community at war within itself over this issue.
Sarah Bristol was mayor of Grants Pass as the controversy and homeless population grew. And did you say at one point there were homeless people sleeping in 15 parks?
Yeah, we had people in all of our city parks, and those parks are all in residential neighborhoods. They're near schools, and so that just wasn't an ideal place for people to be.
Grants Pass was forced to let the homeless live in the parks for years while it challenged the lawsuit. Drugs, needles, and other safety issues chased residents out. Clint Scherf is a local businessman. You think the lawsuit, to some degree or maybe totally, caused a crisis here because it advertised that Grants Pass now was letting people sleep in the park?
My personal opinion is that, yes, that is the root of the explosion of the homeless population. So that, on top of having a beautiful park to live in, I believe, my personal opinion is that put a big neon sign outside on I-5 to our first 2 exits.
Then last summer, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Grants Pass.
The issue was whether or not local governments can punish people for living outside when they have nowhere else to live. And specifically whether the cruel and unusual punishment clause of the 8th Amendment prohibited cities from doing that. And the Supreme Court held 6-3 that the cruel and unusual punishment clause does not prevent cities from doing that.
The Supreme Court decision allowed the injunction to be removed, and so we were able to move homeless people out of our parks.
The lawsuit outcome here in Grants Pass has offered the beginnings of a blueprint to other communities across the country as to how they'll be allowed to handle their own homeless crises.
The more you do provide, or if you...
But Bristol, then the mayor, says that just opened up a new divide over what to do next. She wanted the city to establish new low-barrier shelters that allow pets as well as people who are drinking or using drugs.
I do feel strongly that we need to have places where people can be. And unfortunately, we still don't have a low-barrier homeless shelter. And that's just part of this community trying to come to terms with how to handle this situation.
Other residents want no part of paying for new shelters. And in the first election after the Supreme Court decision last fall, there was a major changeover in the Grants Pass City Council.
The implications were a new city council, you know, that we had 4 city councilors and myself out of office earlier.
Do you think all of you all were voted out largely over this issue?
2 of the councilors didn't run again, and then 2 were running for re-election, as well as myself, and yeah, I'm sure it had absolutely everything to do with this issue.
In the upheaval, Clint Scherf was elected as the new mayor of Grants Pass. He was sworn in just before our visit. He says it's enough that there's already a religious-run shelter in town with plenty of open beds.
So we have a gospel rescue mission that services men and women, mainly men, that is 75% empty, not full, empty. And it's because it does have higher barriers, meaning that you can't smoke, you can't do drugs on the premises, meaning that they don't want to change their ways, they don't want to change their activities, they don't want to change their nature.
So is it accurate to say the city has the green light to move homeless people out of the parks, but there's not really a solution yet as to what to do with them?
Correct. Basically, it says that the city will have to come up with objectable and reasonable accommodations for them, or something, and not just kick them out. You can't go up and
you still have to take care of them.
No, it doesn't state that you have to take care of them. It states that you have to basically be reasonably and objective in how you relocate them. And what that means to me as local government leaders, we need to try to work with all the community resources that we possibly can, which in our case will be the churches, will be the nonprofits, anybody that wants to help.
The mission.
Why not go there?
Because I have 2 dogs that I refuse to get rid of. They are pretty much my service animals. I will not get rid of them at all.
I've been homeless now about 4.5 years, off and on. I've had places to stay, but I just, I don't really be locked up. And like the one in Medford, they lock you down at nighttime. They close the gates, they lock them, they have you on curfews and everything else. And I just didn't feel like I wanted to be there.
We're going to bring this meeting to order in order to...
At its first meeting, the new city council quickly took on the issue of whether to close the 2 relocation camps in Grants Pass.
Where are they supposed to go? They aren't there because of the weather being good. They're there because they have nowhere else to go. It is not just drug use and mental illness. It is poverty. Poverty should not be a crime in this community.
The majority of the people that are unhoused in Grants Pass aren't homeless. They're just not allowed home because of their addiction to drugs.
The council voted to close one of the 2 relocation sites and limit hours at the second. Cassie Leach is a homeless advocate.
The hours there are going to be 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. So, and then that's how I understand it now.
Will people have to move their tents in the day then? So what happens then, do you think? What is your best guess is what's going to happen?
That's the big question, and that's kind of what the community is asking City Council is what's next. Where are they going to go during the day, and how is it going to impact our community and businesses?
For now, the public parks in Grants Pass are safe and clean again and free of the homeless encampments. But far from being an end to the problem, it's only the next chapter in a complex dilemma faced by communities around the country. For more on this story, you can listen to my podcast, Full Measure After Hours.